I'm just waiting to get the cue. Sorry. Let's just see how long we can be quiet. Welcome everyone, it's lovely to see so many faces in here. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much to all of you lovely people in the front of the room. They are going to find out so much about you today, and it's going to be invaluable information. So I'll get started. Just to say, I'm Jenny. I teach here at the university on media and film, and Lydia asked me to help today and do this, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you. So I've got some notes here, so apologies for reading from this, but you've got so much experience between all of you, I have to get it right, okay? So hopefully I will. So I'm going to start off with going through the panel and speaking to them and finding out about who they are, and then I will give them some questions to answer as a collective. Okay, so my first person that I'm going to speak to today is Emily Herbert. Now Emily, you're a silver winner for On Air Talent to Watch at the British Sports Journalism Awards. Congratulations. For those of you who don't know Emily, Emily is a powerhouse in football commentary and reporting, working across radio and television. You may have seen her work on TNT Sports, BBC Sky News, and she's a regular fixture on BBC Radio 5 Live. So Emily, my first question is, you are constantly on the road covering stories from every league in the country, but today, I believe you're in the spotlight. So how does it feel to be on the winners list, and was it a total surprise for you?
Thank you first of all for having me, it's a pleasure to be here. I think it was a little bit of a surprise, yeah, for sure. A guy I work quite closely with, he said, you know, just kind of put a nomination in and see how you go, and then yeah, it turned out that I was kind of the runner-up, which was nice. But yeah, very proud, obviously, achievement.
And what was it like to be there? Was it a great experience? Was it an actual award event?
So it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
So the main awards haven't happened. They're on Monday.
Oh, are they?
Yeah,
do you have to dress up?
Yes, black tie then. So yeah, I've got to get a
You
suit or something.
You haven't got it yet?
No, I haven't got it yet.
Oh my gosh,
No.
what's in it? Okay,
Yeah, so looking forward to it.
Great, thank you so much. And my next question is for Cheryl. I've not put you all in order, so I do apologise. So this is Cheryl Simpson, who spent 2 decades of experience in foreign news for American audiences. Cheryl has reported from some of the world's hostile environments from Iraq to Afghanistan. Her career has spanned the Middle East, Central Asia and South Africa, with senior roles as Bureau Chief at Vice News on HBO and currently Editorial Director at NBC News. It's great to have you here. I hope I got all of that right, did I? It's good. No one's corrected me yet, that's good. You've had an incredible career to date, but if you could pick one moment or a story that you're most proud of, what do you think it would be?
I honestly couldn't choose one out of 20 years, but I kind of defined my life by wars I went to, which is really ridiculous, but it is that there's highlight in, I think my first war was Iraq in the early 2000s, and then transitioned to Afghanistan, and then back to Iraq, and I've done Ukraine, and mostly recently I was on the Gaza border when that kicked off. So it's momentous historical kind of things that I kind of define my life by, so not one particular thing, just world events really.
And have you been in the UK for a while now?
25 years, yeah.
Okay, great.
Still sound Australian.
You do. That's why I had to ask.
Yeah, 25 years.
That wasn't on my list,
No.
sorry. Okay, great, thank you so much. My next question is for Anne. So, Anne, just a little bit about you. Well, quite a lot actually. Hold on, let me read this out for you. So, Anne's also in the broadcasting world. She is a UK correspondent for RTL News, the Dutch equivalent of ITV News in the Netherlands. Reporting on British news and current affairs for a Dutch audience, she's covered major events including the Brexit referendum, the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, the Grenfell fire, and more recently the Peter Mandelson scandal. So my question to you is, how do you choose what's important for a Dutch audience compared to a British one? And what, just on top of that, is there a big difference in how you approach a story versus the UK national press?
I don't think the approach is very different from how you would approach a story at the BBC or any other UK broadcaster. Of course, the choice of stories is slightly different. For example, the Mandelson affairs you just mentioned. Yesterday, when we went into detail with Robin Simmons, was that his name? I can't remember now. The Robin Simmons, yeah. No, sorry. And that was a bit too in-depth. That's more like a national discussion. Whereas if Keir Starmer's position would be in actual danger, that would definitely make the Dutch news. If it is more about national politics and goes too much into detail, then we would choose to step away from it a little bit. But we do, the Dutch press generally is very Anglo-Saxon orientated. We could talk about the history, why that is, but it's just the way it is. But in terms of approach, how you approach a story, I think that's universal. That doesn't matter whether you work for Dutch media or any other media in the world, that is all similar, the same.
Great, thank you. So my next question is for Marika. So I practiced for about, and I'm being serious, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, it's fine.
I did practice a lot, and then I spoke to a couple of people, and they went, I should have just asked you. I do apologise. Okay, so you're also coming from the Netherlands, but a familiar voice for British audiences. With 20 years' experience, she is an expert in film producing and narrative documentaries, currently producing a debate series for BBC Studios. So the question is, with the shift towards video podcasts lately, what is it about pure audio that remains so special to you, and why is it your medium of choice?
We were just talking about the podcasts that we like listening to, actually, and I think, whether it's radio or podcasting, there's something about hearing a story and having to fill in the gaps with your imagination that is really powerful and compelling. And I think, the growth of podcasting as a medium really reflects that, right? Everybody listens to them, whether you're on the move, whether you're at home, whatever. There's something about that kind of storytelling that really speaks to us. I think kind of from my perspective as a producer, what podcasting and radio allows you to do is tell stories when you don't have access to perhaps all of the contributors, right? So maybe you can't get an interview that you want, but you can still tell that story because you can use narration, you can use sound, you can use music. So it's a really kind of interesting way to do a lot with very little, which is what I love about it. It's not like film where you need a whole crew. You basically can go and make a documentary by yourself with a computer and a microphone and a recorder, and that's amazing to me.
Microphones are a very powerful thing.
Yes.
Thank you. So my next question is for Millie. So Millie is actually a Brighton alumni. Millie Payne was studied here between 2017 to 2021. You got your BA degree here and your postgraduate diploma. So now you are a senior writer and content editor at Bauer Media. You specialise in entertainment, working across the brands that you've probably heard of: Heat, Closer, Grazia, Bella and Jaws. Good. All of the information is correct. Good. Millie, you've met so many stars, people from all walks of life. I'm sure you've got some juicy insights for us at some point. Please share them. But looking back at your celebrity encounters, are there any that are your absolute favourites that stand out, and what makes that so memorable?
Yeah, hello. Firstly, it's really nice to be here. Do you know what? When I was thinking about this question, it can be really hard to actually remember who you've spoken to, because the weeks, as you guys probably know as students, they absolutely fly by. And I was only like, oh my God, who would actually be my favourites? So my ultimate favourites are Sam Thompson and Pete Wicks. They host the Staying Relevant podcast, and I think I probably do put them on a bit of a pedestal because I love their podcast, I listen to it week in, week out, but that sometimes can be a bit daunting interviewing them when you really, really love them. but they've always been so lovely, so polite. We've kind of built up a bit of a rapport now, so that feels really, really special to know that you've built that relationship with them. And in terms of like juicy insights and stuff, I think the thing that I found most interesting is, now I don't know how many of you guys in the room are into entertainment, reality TV, but the publicists and the agents that work with the reality stars, and I'm talking about your Love Islands, your Love is Blind, those kind of shows, they tend to be the strictest when it comes to interviewing. So, for example, someone might have just left Love Island a month ago, they're famous for Love Island, and they'll say, oh, we only want one question on Love Island. And it's like, well, what do you expect us to speak to them about then? So I found that really interesting. And then you've got bigger stars, so I was very grateful, luckily, before the Family Feud started, that I got to speak to Brooklyn Beckham, and his team were so chilled out. They were like, yeah, here you go, here's the Zoom link, no, this topic's off limits, or you can't ask this, but yet someone from Love Island, no, you can't ask them about this. That's what I think's quite interesting.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you. Those people in the room, they always make me, it depends, sometimes there's not just one of them, there's quite a few of them that are sort of the guard keepers, and it's like, but actually the celebrity, a lot of the time, is really cool,
Yeah,
but it's the people around them that go, absolutely not.
that is
Always.
exactly it.
Yeah,
And
you sort of have to get around them.
it's frustrating because sometimes you feel like you're getting somewhere with someone, and then it's sometimes the people around them, it's like, actually, this can't be spoken about for X, Y, Z, and it's like, it's frustrating because you feel like you're cutting through. So it's, yeah, you're right, it's the gatekeepers around them that sometimes make it a little bit challenging, but the celebs themselves are actually really nice and willing to chat.
Okay, so I'd like to speak to you, Harriet, please. So on the writing side of journalism, we're joined by Harriet Sinclair, Senior Editor at Yahoo News. Harriet's career has seen her at the heart of global politics, serving as US News Editor for The Independent and Deputy Politics Editor at Newsweek. From the Iran nuclear deal to the 2020 US election, Harriet has covered it all. So Harriet, you've sat down with figures like Hillary Clinton. How do you balance holding leaders to account and without burning bridges?
I think your first responsibility as a journalist is to your readers and also to your editor, who will be quite annoyed if you don't come back with something good. So really, when you're talking to a public figure or a celebrity, or anyone that you want information from, I think really you go in there with an idea of the topics that you want to cover. If there's a sort of breaking news story of the day that involves that person, that's what you want them to be touching on. I think when you also kind of read the room, so if you have a long sit down with someone that you're going to sort of see again and again, maybe it is more about relationship building and yes, getting quotes that you can use, but also thinking to yourself, I'll bank this for the future. If you have a brief sort of 2 seconds with somebody, I mean, you're not going to be cracking like a case, or getting some kind of in-depth knowledge that no one else has. You've got enough time for a soundbite. So I think it's also about knowing what you're expected to get from the people that you talk to as well.
Thank you so much. So we've spoken to all of you and what wealth of knowledge you all have. I've got one question just to put out to all of you, and if you can all have a brief answer. I don't know if it can be brief actually, but let's see. So the depth of knowledge that everybody has, as I've said, is great. So as you're all in different areas, so sports, politics, broadcast and digital, what made you choose journalism is my first question. And in your experience, what is the most rewarding part of the profession? We can start with you, Harriet. Oh no, I can see you were going to do that. I was like, no, let's go with you.
I always thought I wanted to be a journalist. Growing up, I loved writing, and the idea that someone would pay me to write stuff, whether it was my opinion or covering news piece, always sounded brilliant. Genuinely, I think journalism is one of the best jobs in the world. Like when it's on, it's great, it's such a good day, it's meeting people who are interesting, it's getting to the heart of a story, it's holding people to account. It's all the things, and especially, whether it's that you're interested in entertainment or sport or politics, it's something that you're passionate about, and you get to talk to the best people in the world doing that job. Like, that's great, and the access you get and the information you get, as a naturally nosy person, it's great for me, I love it. Because when else can you sort of ask a politician, like, oh, what do you think about this? And it's your question and it comes from you, and that's everything, I think. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I feel like I resonated a lot with what you said. I always love writing. Originally I used to say I want to write books, which I would love to do one day, but I think I'm quite a chatterbox, so to combine the love for writing and the love for talking and get paid for it feels like an absolute win. And agree with what you said. There's a lot out there at the moment, I'm sure we'll touch on it at some point, about how the industry's changing and at what an overwhelming pace it's changing. But at the end of the day, journalism is always going to be needed in whichever area. Like, it's so important to have those conversations, and I think I've always said I wanted a job where no day's the same, and this is exactly what this job gives you, no matter what part of the industry you go into. And it certainly keeps you on your toes, which I think is always important as well.
I also agree with everything that you've both just said. I come at this from a slightly different perspective in that I'm not sure I would call myself a journalist, which probably should exempt me from the panel. I started off in news journalism as a reporter, and now I'm a producer. And so there's this interesting distinction, I think, between kind of production, specifically audio and radio production, when you don't work in news, and the kind of stuff that you guys do. But I mean, broadly speaking, it's the same sort of, we do the same thing. We kind of get to take on a subject, get really into it, ask loads of people lots of questions, and become an expert on something, every month that you just never imagined you would learn about, which is wicked, and we paid for it. So, and again, I think there's also something about making, in my case, hopefully, sort of documentaries that are engaging to listen to, and sort of hopefully occasionally also beautiful if you think about the sound or the music, and then having them on the radio and people tell you, I heard that thing you made and it was incredible, I learned this or I learned that. So there is a feedback loop, I think we should admit that. But it's quite nice to probably see your name in print or hear your name read out by a continuity announcer. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I went into journalism for the adventure, I think. I always wanted to become an archaeologist. I'm very much into history until my sister told me at the age of 11 that I couldn't make a living and I'd probably end up a teacher, and I wanted to dig and, just dig for treasure. And then I decided, okay, well, that's not going to work, so what shall I do? And my brother had a leaflet of the School of Journalism, and it had this really interesting. I also always enjoyed writing from a very young age. I loved writing. I thought, well, that's perfect. That's an adventurous job, and writing, that's really appealing to me. And from that moment onwards, I wanted to become a journalist, and I also specifically wanted to become a correspondent. I think the beautiful thing about it is, like the others said, is the fact that you speak to so many different people from all walks of life. You're allowed to ask them questions. People share their stories with you, sometimes very vulnerable people, so I feel very privileged to be able to share their story. Sometimes you think, oh my gosh, that they share this story with you is quite, and then you're allowed to broadcast it as well, is quite a privilege. As the others have said, no day is the same. Sometimes to your frustration, sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to have a really relaxed day, and then Prince Andrew is being arrested, and then you're working until late at night, and you get hardly any sleep. But it's just it's a great job. It's a challenging job, but it's brilliant. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Okay, Emily, do you remember the question? Shall I repeat the question?
I don't think I have kind of the same experiences as you guys, as in I never liked writing, I was never very good at it, and I guess sports is slightly different. In my job anyway, obviously there's sports writers, but I'm in the broadcast section, so it's mainly using my voice and stuff. So it's slightly different in that respect, and I don't have 20 years in the industry. I've only really kind of just started. But I wanted to be a professional sports player, to be honest with you, and I knew I was never going to make it. So I thought, what's the next best thing? And it's probably a commentator or a coach maybe, but I never have the kind of time and patience to be a coach. So a commentator it was, and then you kind of adapt and you fall in love with this sport. And I only followed football. I've only been following football for about 3 years, so it's very, very new. But again, no day is the same, and you get to call these incredible moments of, you know, you can't predict a football game. You can kind of, I think, predict some of the news, whereas you know something's going to happen because of this has happened, etc., etc. You can kind of call it. But in football, you know, anything can happen, as we've seen for the past few years. So in that respect, it's exciting, and this adrenaline rush I think you can't match, probably unless you're on the field, but I was never going to be there, so it's the second best thing. Yeah, have I answered that question? Or?
I don't know. Rewarding. What's the most rewarding?
Rewarding is calling the games for sure. Being up on the gantry and, you know, seeing I don't know, Gyökeres, you know, smashing a penalty to win it last minute, and maybe win the Premier League potentially is phenomenal, and I don't think you can replicate that.
Brilliant, thank you.
Oh, okay. So, big secret, you don't need a journalism degree, sorry Lydia, to be a journalist. I don't have one. I have a degree in archaeology and history, and actually became an archaeologist when I was younger, and I worked in Cambodia and whatnot. But I will tell you, at age 11, I think it, in some respects, and don't make me sound like a woo-woo, but it is destined. I remember being age 11, we had in Australia, we only had 3 channels in the olden days, and so I came from a house that watched a current affairs of an evening, and there was a show, an Australian show called 60 Minutes, and there was a reporter, and her name was Jana Bent, and she was from Czechoslovakia, and I thought it was the most exotic thing, and they went all around the world, and I thought, that's what I want to do. Turns out I didn't have the confidence. I wanted a cadetship at the Sydney Morning Herald when I was in high school. I thought, oh, that's what I was, and I didn't have the confidence as a working class kid. I thought that kind of pathway is maybe not open to me, so I went down the more kind of academic history route. But I found my way back quickly enough, and everything is rewarding. I mean, the documentaries you get to make, the news events that you kind of go to, that I think the main key when telling a story is to connect with an audience. So if you've watched something that we've done and then you've got a tiny little takeaway that kind of resonates with you, then I have done my job, and that's the most rewarding thing for me. It's connection.
And it also feels like, in terms of history, that you're writing history on a daily basis. So
Yeah.
you're
Get
writing
to
history as
experience
it happens.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, archaeology, or not archaeology, history and journalism has this, you know, a strong connection and correlation.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. That's really great. So just a couple more questions for me, and then I'm going to open to the floor. So if anyone's got any questions, have a think about what you might like to ask the panel. So as it's very, very clear from hearing from all of you, and I'm sure you all know in the room, journalism is a fantastic profession, and you all agree, but there are a lot of hurdles along the way. So it would be great if you wouldn't mind sharing a few of them with us. So if you have a look back at your own journeys, could you share one particular difficulty you may have faced as a woman in journalism, and the steps that you have taken to move past it? It's quite a big question, I know, but I feel like everyone in the room is sort of on their way, but it's quite nice, isn't it, if they can learn about what things might pop up for them.
So I'm really lucky to have worked in quite a lot of female-led teams. It's totally coincidence, but yeah, I feel really privileged that for large chunks of my career, my colleagues and my bosses have been women. And what I notice is that in audio, that means you often still have to work with talent who are male and often white and in their mid-50s. And I think it's a real challenge working with presenters who are put on a pedestal by both your colleagues and the industry as a whole. I still find it challenging. I'm currently working with people whose behaviour is, and I'm not talking about sexual intimidation here, I'm just talking about kind of power and arrogance and intimidation of younger female colleagues. And I'm not that young, I'm in my 40s, and I still kind of regularly feel belittled by powerful male presenters. It's a real challenge. I think it's really important to talk about it. When you ask what you can do about it, I mean, I work for the BBC, we have systems in place, right? Do those systems work? I'm not sure they always do. I think, like, culturally, it's sort of incumbent on all of us, women and men, but to, like, continue to call this out, to speak about it, to tell each other when we face behaviour that's unacceptable, and you know, I think it's not always as obvious as somebody kind of groping you or somebody sort of patting you on the back or whatever, any of the many things that have happened at the BBC. But you know, it's sort of abuses of power by kind of, by men who are often kind of allowed to get away with it for a long time, and I think we have to try and change it. We are trying to change it. I don't know how successful we're being, but I don't know if anyone wants to add to that. But
I think for me, everything that you've said, and I would also add to that, one of the things I think you face that you don't necessarily realise at the time is the assumption of knowledge from male colleagues that you don't necessarily have as a woman. And so I have found that, especially in newsrooms where news desks are often quite male-dominated, there's often suggestion that if you're a woman, you're going to be filtered into sort of perceived softer subjects like lifestyle. Lifestyle journalism is great, by the way. If you're looking to go into it, it is great, and nothing that you're interested in should be belittled, but it often is as women. Whereas you don't find that more traditionally, like, male areas like news and sport are treated in the same way. And so I think if you're standing up in a news meeting and you're the only woman, that in itself can feel quite intimidating. And I think that sometimes, I can't believe it's still happening, you know, in this day and age, but you will make a suggestion and people kind of and ah, and then you'll hear Timmy down the road make the same suggestion. And people are like, wow, Timmy! What a great idea, Timmy. What a fantastic idea. And so that is frustrating. And I think what is also frustrating is that if you call that behaviour out, sometimes you are seen as the problem. I don't know how we deal with it. I think just continue to call it out. Talking to male colleagues as well, one of the best things that I've started doing in recent times is asking my male colleagues how much they are paid. It's a super awkward question. It's really important. There have been times I've found out that I am being paid far less than people who are reporting into me. And so I'm thrilled I asked the question. Talking to your colleagues, talking to other women, and elevating the voices of women in the room. If you're in a news meeting and another woman makes a suggestion, let's hear more from her, please, and let's hear you say, oh, thank you, that was great, rather than elevating the voice of a man who can probably do that by himself.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think that's a big thing as well. I think that as women in journalism, I think we've got a big responsibility in raising and appreciating and making sure these women are heard and being a friend and supportive for them. It's no surprise that 9 times out of 10 when I walk into a press room at a football stadium, it's all men and I'm the only woman there. For example, at Southampton last night, I was the only girl in the press box, which is, quite intimidating, but at the same time, I think you've got to have a lot of self-belief and a lot of note and a lot of worthy that what you are doing is just as good, if not better, than what these people are doing. And I think it takes a lot of resilience and a lot of mental strength to do that. But saying that, I do think it's getting better. I'm lucky to have bosses at the BBC, at TNT, that are extremely supportive and are helping women to get more into the sports industry. And there's a big push, actually, to hear more women on the radio. On 5 Live, you hear it on Around the Grounds on Saturday. There's 3-4 women now on there every week, which, 5-10 years ago, there was none. So it is getting better. There's still a long way to go, but I do think I agree with what you said, is in you've got to support the women and
Can I add something to that?
add to their accomplishments. Yeah.
Can I just ask, sorry, before you take the microphone back, I wanted to ask you a question, but do you feel like you've had to work harder to prove yourself? Because sports, obviously, there's so many debates that I keep seeing, like on the radio, where, like male sports people, I'm not into sports, if you cannot tell, I'm so sorry, but will criticise female, will criticise sort of female pundits.
Yeah.
over things that I think, I mean, I listened to the thing that the woman said and the thing that the man said. They both sounded very similar to me, and I just think, do you feel like you have to kind of prove that you're, you know, as good as you are?
Yeah, I think you've got to be 2 times better to be seen as the same as a man, 100%. But at the end of the day, I know I am just as good as, you know, Billy sat next to me, if not better.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mindset thing, and I think you've got to have that to be able to make it in. I'm sure the news as well, but definitely sport.
Yeah.
So it's a big accomplishment. But all of these men that are saying this stuff are all old white men that are sat, you know, probably on Talk Sport and, you know, saying silly things that are just not true anymore. So yeah, take it with what you will, but they're probably not true.
Thank you.
I know that you briefly touched on it about the money element, and I saw a statistic, I think it was maybe March time, that 60% of women have never asked for a pay rise. Now, I'm not advocating that you go into work, and also there is a stigma, I just want to say that, oh, journalism's poorly paid, and I don't want that to put you off, but that's why I raised this point, is that, yeah, going back to it, 60% of women don't ask for a pay rise, and I think you have to know your worth. That doesn't mean going in every week hounding your boss for a pay rise, but I think it's about having these conversations really openly. It is a taboo topic, it is uncomfortable, and like you said, obviously asking people what they're paid, it's never nice to have those conversations, but they are so necessary for your self-worth. And also, if you feel like you're going above and beyond what's in your contract and you're proving yourself day in, day out, why shouldn't you ask for a pay rise? And I think I'd really, really like to see that statistic come down. I'm not saying that men don't find it uncomfortable to ask, but that's quite astonishing that 60% don't. It's not a natural conversation to have, and I would really like to see it normalised.
I just wanted to add something. Yeah, it's first of all about the pay rise. Yes, definitely do talk about it. I'm a freelance journalist, and so are many of the other correspondents are freelance now, are self-employed. Amongst our correspondent network at RTL, we have I've created a bit of a conversation about how we're being paid, and so it's incredibly important, and also to because then you realise how much people are being paid, and then you can compare it. It's difficult to compare different positions and different correspondents in different parts of the world, but we've been able to speak openly about it, and I've noticed that it has helped us go back to RTL and have negotiations about our retainer and about the way we're being paid. So it's definitely difficult or important to talk about it. Secondly, I think on the news floor in the Netherlands, I think women are, I think, culturally direct and quite open, right? Yeah. So when I came to study in the UK, I noticed what you just described as a female student even, you were expected not to shout as loud as I did. So I toned down a bit in discussions in the classroom. So you can already practice speaking out in class, sharing your opinion in class. So you can already start doing that now. Now you're here at university. And I sort of toned it down, but I would recommend you not to do that. Be more Dutch. Be more Dutch. Wicked. Yeah.
You've covered it all.
All right,
Smash
cool,
the patriarchy.
So this is just following on from that actually. So obviously all of your journeys are quite unique, but the industry has changed quite a lot over the last couple of years. So looking back at your own past, how did you manage to persevere and make your mark despite the obstacles that were faced along the way? You don't all have to answer, but if some of you could, that would be great.
I think you find the energy within yourself just to keep going. If it's what you really want to do and you're really emotionally, spiritually invested in something and you really feel it's a calling, then you will do it. You will keep going on your path and not give two shits about anything else. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you really want to make it in this industry, I think you really have to have a huge passion for it, and you've got to really understand that it is definitely what you want to do, because if there's a slight doubt in your mind that, you know, this might not be for me, I think, you know, I've seen people crumble and come out of the industry, so I think you've got to be resilient in that and really be determined, and you do find the energy, you do find it, no matter what obstacles come in the way, it's just a stepping stone and you work around it to try and get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I would say all of these things, and also having quite a thick skin as well, because especially at the beginning, when you are applying for jobs, like, guess what, 100 people are applying for these jobs, and I think, I mean, I actually took my first journalism job in the Middle East because I graduated, I'm old, during the financial crisis, and there were no jobs, and, you know, I saw loads of people advertising for, like, free, like an intern to work for free for 6 months. I was like, free for 6 months? Like, how will I eat? So that was not for me. So I left the country to get sort of experience that I couldn't find here. But I think it's just, you know, plodding on, keeping going, looking for every opportunity and not taking rejection personally. Like sometimes it just isn't the job for you, something else will come along. So yeah, it's just the keeping going.
Yeah, again, very much what these guys have said, but also I think it's about making connections at every single point that you can. I think so much these days it's, oh, let's jump on a Zoom call and let's jump on let's have a phone call, which is great and really accessible, really easy, but also take the opportunities to meet people face to face. Even if you can't get work experience or an internship or a job, message someone, oh, is there any chance I could just even have a look around the office, get a feel for the environment that you want to go into, and who knows who you're going to meet along the way. I think everything is resorted these days to connecting with people online, which 100% do, because that's often how a lot of opportunities come up. But if you can network face to face and go for coffees with people and put your name out there and build your portfolio in whatever area that is, I think it's invaluable.
Yeah, and I think just on that, in terms of connections, there's a really important thing to remember, I guess, in any career, but just don't be a dick. And I say that, like, in seriousness, in my sort of area, you know, it's a very small kind of world. People know each other, people talk. You don't know whether the guy who's your researcher at the moment is later going to be your boss. He probably is going to be my boss. So, you know, like, I think it's really important to remember that, you know, when you're working in a team, be the one who's helpful, be nice. I used to make a lot of cups of tea at the beginning of my career. People remember it, and I've been hired successively by people who remember me from previous places. We might have worked together 10 years earlier, but they know you, right? They know that you're, you know, they know your work, but they also know that you're a nice or a good person. I think it goes a long way, especially in kind of what is sometimes quite cutthroat industry.
No, I agree with all of that. I also agree that you, well, the internships though, I have to add, all my internships ended up in a job. So it is worth it. Maybe not 6 months for free, that's a bit of a stretch, but showing up, showing what you're worth, even if it's for a week or a couple of months, or if it's for very low pay, if it's something you would really want to do, I would recommend doing it and smash it, because it could lead to a job. My first internship was at the Dutch version of Newsround. After my 3-month internship, I overheard that summer was starting. In summer, by the way, that lots of people go on holiday and they need freelancers to cover shifts and stuff at BBC, but also at other news organisations. And I overheard my editor say, "Oh, we're a bit short of staff," and I just sat up and said, "Oh, but I can work. That's fine." And he said, "Oh, well, we'll discuss it." The next day, they offered me a 3-month contract. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Brilliant, thank you. Such wonderful tips. I hope you're all taking notes, are you? Good? Great, I am. So one last question from me, and then I'll ask you guys for yours. So we have to address the reality of the industry right now. With the recent layoffs at the Washington Post and the BBC, and of course the usage of AI, with smaller teams being asked to do so much more. The students in the room who are worried about the future careers that they may be able to get, what would be your advice, and what is the one skill or mindset they need to develop right now to navigate these challenges?
Well, the only thing I could say, I mean, I find it challenging to keep up with the changes within the industry, and something I'm really bad at, in fact, I don't have an account, is TikTok. So I think your strength is knowing what's relevant now to young people, and I think social media is not going to die anytime soon, not only within journalism but within like all sorts of industries. They need people with storytellers who can put out their stories, advertising companies. So I think that is something that you should really, because do you know a lot about TikTok? I don't. So I think that's your strength. So you can play at it, right? So you can. They need young people to know about these things, how it works, what's acceptable in terms of editing, visuals, those kind of things. So I think, yeah.
I also think maybe flexibility is becoming more and more important, which makes me a bit sad because, you know, I'm a radio producer and I don't want to have to edit video, but I have now learned to use Premiere. Like, we have had to adapt, we've had to start making our podcast into vodcasts. I think your generation are much better at that anyway. It feels like you're more multimedia in your approach than perhaps we were, some of us coming up, but that is a strength now. And, you know, in terms of work as well, like if you get offered a gig and it's not exactly what you want, do it. Because, you know, that gig will lead to something else. Maybe it's not the show that you want to work on, maybe you don't like the subject matter, but if you take that job and stick at it and prove that you're good, then they're going to consider you for the next one that you do want to do. So that, like, having that flexibility, I think, not being picky, you know, not being too good for anything, if it's kind of getting your foot in the door, I think is really, really important at the beginning of the career, especially.
I think probably the most important thing I would say is, even if you end up in a really specific career path, don't be afraid to broaden your skill set, quite similar to what you said. I think, I'll be completely honest, Bauer are really pushing the use of AI, and we obviously work in a very creative field, so it hasn't gone down wonderfully. Particularly, I've been there 5 years, but there are people that have been there 20, 25 years that can't quite wrap their head around it. I must admit, even for myself, I struggle with it, but I think it's about embracing the technology where it can help you, but also realising that, hang on, I am still me, I've got these skills to bring to the table, and also having that confidence to utilise your own skills while embracing the newer technology as well. But I think, don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. I remember studying here, and video journalism was not my thing at all. I was like, please let me stick to the words. And I actually really enjoyed it. So I think that kind of gave me, not that I dip too much into it at the moment, but it kind of has given me a bit of confidence to try it again in the future. So don't write something off. If you're, you know, less fond of the word side of things, just think to yourself, like, why not give it a go? Because I think it's really important to be multifaceted wherever you can.
Yeah, I would say exactly. Actually, I'm going to give you two conflicting pieces of advice. So one of them is to just get a foot in the door, get into the building, make a phone call. Do you have any? Don't wait for jobs to come up on job sites or social media or whatever. Phone people. Do you have any shifts going? This is my name. Let me email you. Be in touch with people. And once you're in the door, if there's something that you don't necessarily think you are particularly qualified for, learn what it is that you need to do that. I remember I started out, I was working at the Mirror. And I was on their news desk, and they were like, you know, it's a shame that you don't do kind of TV coverage, because we really need someone to cover Big Brother. And I was like, oh yeah, love that show, about someone's older brother. Someone said, no, it's reality. I was like, oh yeah, great. But I went home and I was like, right, I'll watch this show and I'll learn, because I just want to be here. And once I'm here, I'll get a job that, you know, hopefully I'm a bit more interested in. No shade to Big Brother, it was a very interesting show. But the other thing is to keep an eye on trends and build a niche for yourself. If you know that you are the best writer about weird train sets from the 80s, like, someone might be interested in that, so keep going. When I was at Newsweek, way before the current politics cycle we're looking at, but we were looking at who might declare for the 2016 election, who might put their name forward. I was like, yeah, there's rumours that this guy Donald Trump might have a go. And at the time, it was really like, yeah, but probably not. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to research this guy anyway. I'm going to try and do some background. I'm going to get in touch with some of my contacts in the US who might know him. And we started kind of covering these stories. And then actually, when he did declare, and then obviously, we all know how that turned out. But I had enough of a niche that they were like, you know what, you should be doing more politics coverage. And that's how I became a politics correspondent for Newsweek. So it's worth investing in stories that you think are going to go somewhere if you have a feeling about them or if you know you can cover them well.
Yeah, I would say foot in the door, kick it in, however, whatever way you can get in. Meeting us, who can we connect you to? It is one big spidey web of contacts and conversations and names. I would say the newsroom is, I don't know how many of you have been in it, maybe a broadcast newsroom, but it's not what it was like even 10 years ago. Like now NBC News, I think, has the #1 TikTok news website with millions of subscribers in the States and hopefully, yeah, I don't know. We have subscription service, everyone's doing verticals, there's a whole social media news gathering teams. You don't even have to work on a traditional news desk, you can work, I call it news adjacent because I don't understand what everyone does, but there are plenty of other journalism jobs. It's not all the kind of traditional stuff that we do. We have an OSINT team who track down a picture of a tanker, where was it going, can we use it? They verify video for us. You're all digital natives, not like me. So kind of find what you're interested in and really kind of push into it, but learn as many jobs as you can. When I started out, I was a tape-to-tape editor before digital. This is how old I am. And then you learn all the skills as you go. Like I know how to shoot on a camera, I can write a script for television. It's all of that kind of just accumulate every little job thing that you can, and then later figure out what you're really good at, but learn all the jobs.
How many of you make phone conversations? Just telephone, just pick up the phone and make an appointment instead of booking something online.
Talk to a human.
Talk to a human.
Yeah.
That's something you can also practice whilst you. So instead of booking your hairdresser appointment online, phone the hairdresser. Just phone, just old-fashioned phone, because it helps you have, without seeing somebody, having a conversation about something and getting something done, and that is incredibly important when you interview people, but also when you want to get a job. So it's something you can actually practice in daily life.
I'd say for me it's people who you know at the end of the day is what's going to get you the jobs. All of my jobs have come through kind of connections I've done on one job, and then someone has known someone and they've recommended my name, etc., etc. The web goes on. But at the end of the day, like I'm sure all of you have social media, have a TikTok account, have Instagram. There is no reason why you can't be posting videos. For example, sport, if you're a Brighton fan about Welbeck's goal against Chelsea last night, there is no reason why you can't be saying, this was a great goal and this was why it was this, that, because there are stations like BBC London, for example, that are after fans like you, and you'll get a call, you'll be on the radio, and then that is on your CV already. There are people younger than you that are doing this now, and also Sky Sports. Whether you agree with it or not, they're after young fans. They don't pay you, but they are after young fans to go on the telly and talk about your football club. And again, that is a fantastic experience, but you can do that right now.
Also, just say one more thing, it's probably more relevant in news, but access is really important. If you've got a story, if you know somebody, if you heard something that you think would make a good article or podcast or documentary series, use that, because it's everything. And even if you don't know how to tell that story, right, if you find the right person, and like we've all said, it's all about connections, you might have to kind of use your network a little bit, but if you find the right person who puts you in touch with the right person, there will be an editor who's interested if it's a good story, and you're going to be learning as you throughout your career what makes a good story. But if you have one, do try and don't think ever, I'm not a journalist yet, this isn't my career. That is how people start, that's how people get, some of the best podcast series or the best TV series have come out of somebody who had a good access.
I think you underestimate, the fact that we grew up in a non-digital age, I'm afraid to say. So, for example, I don't know if you've read the news about the Red versus Blue challenge in secondary schools in UK. If you've seen it online, it was shared on WhatsApp groups, and it was a non-issue because teenagers didn't really take it serious. There were social media posters shared, AI posters, where there was names of schools, in red and blue, and they sort of created or instigated gang violence. Parents, as soon as they saw it, freaked out. They thought, my child's not allowed to wear their school jumper to school because their logo is on it, maybe they'll be attacked on their way to school. So it was blown up because their parents, including me, didn't understand what was going on online. So I think you underestimate perhaps the power of, you know, the world that is sort of new to us, the digital world. And AI, the use of AI, rubbish at it.
Thank you so much. I was just going to say, on the telephone call is so important, and I actually made a phone call yesterday. I was about to email a museum to find out some information, and I just thought they may take ages to get back to me. I really need this in. And then I just picked up the phone, and it was so great to just pick up the phone. Someone on the other end had the answers, and what she couldn't tell me, she has given me a name to speak to, and I got the information like that. So please do not underestimate how important it is to just call up companies even to see if they've got any availability, because I think we've all got our phones all the time, but I think we forget, like, you know, you just forget to use them because you can text or, you know. So, yes, anyway.
It takes ages for them to reply to your email, so you can wait a week, so just phone them.
And it does make you stand out, because most people do not make a phone call nowadays. So your email, though it might be the best email, it's in an email box and an inbox of like another 100. So if you just make that phone call, you can skip all of that. So it's a really good idea to start practicing.
Email and then follow up.
And follow up. Yeah. We could chat for ages about phone calls. So I'm going to open it to the floor now. So thank you so much again. Has anybody got any questions? What I'd like you to do is, if you can put your hand up and let us know who you're directing your question to, and it can be for the whole panel, that's fine. And yeah, open the floor to you guys. Yes, my first hand is just over here. Would someone like to run around with the mic? I'll start because I'm closer. Thank you. There you go, lovely.
Hello, I'm really bad with names. This is for the person that graduated at Brighton.
Yeah.
So obviously you work for a magazine and better magazine, stuff like that. How important would you say it is when you're getting a job to send in articles that you've designed, so you can work on things like designing covers and stuff, and obviously writing stories for magazines? Is that a good way to get you even in the door, even without applying for a job?
I'm just going to bring it. Sorry.
Hello, thank you for your question. I would say that in addition to applying for a job, if you can find through LinkedIn or through any other means the hiring manager, if you want to send a portfolio of stuff that you've been working on, that is, I would say, an added bonus, because then it's making you stand out again. And that is a lot about what it's about these days, is being remembered and standing out. So I would definitely say, if, say, like you were applying for a job at the magazine, showing previous designs, showing previous interest in the, you know, articles that you might have enjoyed from the magazine, for example, I would say that's definitely worthwhile, for sure. It can't do you any harm going that little bit above and beyond. Yes, the only thing it's going to cost you is your time, but at the end of the day, you might reap incredible benefits from it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Fab.
The lady next to, yeah.
Oh, I don't need the microphone, I can
Shout.
I can get writing, it's fine. My question is for Cheryl, but it can also be towards the whole panel if anyone wants to also answer. You can probably hear as well, I'm Australian, which is why
I'm so
Australian. As an Australian, making your career overseas, did you find immersing yourself in another country's news landscape a challenge, and how did you mitigate it? And the reason I'm asking is because I've been here 7 years myself, and I'm studying at Brighton. I'm loving it, and I love living in England, and I have no plans to go back home, sadly, to my mum's dismay. But I just sometimes find myself that because I'm not from here, and I worry that maybe I'm thinking too much about, as an Australian, how I'm interpreting the news, or kind of like referring back to news outlets in Australia that I'm so used to and consuming, and I still consume.
I just wonder if it was a challenge because you've obviously made your career overseas, and anything that you did to mitigate that or?
Yeah, so even though I live in London, I've lived here for 25 years, my audience is not British, and I don't cover British news really. I cover international news for an American audience, so it's even more of a disjointed thing, but I think it's something you learn, once you're in a newsroom, you can pick up on the job. Like, I think you're overthinking it. Like, make it your superpower. Like, be Australian, be just that easygoing, laid back, get on with it kind of person. And I really think that once you're in a newsroom, if you are intuitive enough and you just adapt to whatever your thing is. Like, when I hire people, especially junior, we used to have a lot from Falmouth College. Is that Falmouth, Portsmouth, I don't know, somewhere like that, the journalism college. But we can have, like, we have jobs on the news desk, overnight editor jobs, this is very junior level jobs. But you don't have a lot of runs at that age, so you're kind of looking for enthusiasm and just, can you get it? Like, and also if you're applying for a job, say with I don't have any jobs by the way, but if you're applying for a job, like, don't overthink what your thing is. Know who you're applying to. So if someone was to coming to me looking for a job at NBC News, I would expect at a bare minimum that they have a little bit of an understanding of what we broadcast. You can watch the Today Show on YouTube. You can watch nightly news and the streaming channels on YouTube. So you get a sense of what the stories are, and I think that's the best way in. Like, don't overthink it. It can all be learned.
One thing that I've found really difficult, and me and this guy here have spoken about before. When we were also doing like final big pieces of work for third year and leaving uni, and one thing that I found really challenging was actually getting an interview specifically with politicians or councillors or anything like that. And Michael has before interviewed local MPs and stuff, and he found it really easy, and I've found that no matter how many times I email, call, no matter how many times I chase something up, I never get it back. And I've found that I've noticed that a lot between the women and the men. The men seem to get the interviews a lot quicker and a lot easier than if I'm working out. I was just wondering if that's something that any of you have struggled with and how you've overcome that.
Can you doorstop them? Like, catch them out? Like, literally coming, out of an office? Is it that kind of?
Half the time, like some of the, especially with the topic that I've been doing, my main thing, it was on sex workers, so I can't really turn up to a strip club or to like a politician.
You can.
I have tried my hardest, and I managed to track down a few, but it took I've been emailing MPs, local councillors, MPs, anyone since October, and I only got an interview 2 weeks ago. It was so hard.
Well, I was just going to say, sometimes it's worth trying to find other people who might connect you to those people. I mean, Google is your friend with this sort of thing. I've become really good at digging into who's the secretary or who's the assistant or I don't know, stuff like that. So I think it's worth sort of using a roundabout way to get to who you're going to. Exactly.
And I struggle with that. So I, to be honest, I've been working on stories that I started in December and they've only aired last week. I'm not entirely sure. Was it a different story that you were working on, or was it similar story? Same story. I reached out to over 75 local councils and MPs and I had 2 responses.
Okay.
But side note, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Like if you want to talk genuinely, like if you want to do a comment piece for your student paper about discrimination and the fact that men and women are being treated differently when they're seeking interviews, that's a really good story.
Yeah, but it does take time for me as well. Sometimes people are just too busy, and as a foreign correspondent, I'm not part of the UK media, so I'm not necessarily the priority of MPs or charities or organisations to, but yeah, usually I find my way around it and find somebody else. But 75 is definitely a huge amount.
And just on that note, have you got I was about to say Twitter, it's not Twitter, X account?
Yeah, I have one, but I couldn't because of the type of, I'm very left activist, I'm very strong on my political view, and I was looking to interview reform MPs, and I figured, I did contemplate going through social media, and then I thought, I don't think any of them are going to be very willing to talk to me if they see what I repost and what I've liked and everything like that, so I didn't want anything like that to affect trying to reach out to them.
A tool that I use quite a lot through X is going into quite a lot of detail about the story you're looking to cover, and then you might not get an MP respond to you, but if you put at the end that you're looking to speak to people within this field, and then #journo request, and I have found that particularly for perhaps not as hard-hitting articles as what you've been doing, sometimes it takes a while for them to come through, and the people that respond, I'm like, oh, that's not quite a fit. You'll be surprised how lucky you can get from it, and also using a site called Quoted, which is QWOTED, and then you've also got people that run that site for you and can help you source contacts, and I found that to be really useful. Now, I can't promise that you're going to get MPs from that, but what it might do is, again, connect you to people who know of people that can be another good voice for your piece, for example. If you had anything?
No, that was great. I feel like I've learned some things. I think I would probably add to that as well, like, if you are looking to speak to local MPs because they have to be local, that's fine, and that is one thing, but are there MPs, you know, maybe who speak on sex work more generally that you could reach out to that aren't necessarily your local MP, but might be able to give you a quote and then put you in touch with those other people?
I did try and do some research. The most I could find was like recent comments Labour MPs had made about OnlyFans and maybe taxing people who work on OnlyFans a little bit more than what the regular person would. But again, like, I've been on so many hold lines to so many different offices, it's been ridiculous. And just even female councillors were really reluctant to talk to me about it because I was getting a lot of like, well, this isn't a very big topic of conversation at the minute, and it's not something that we're focusing on, we're thinking about it, and it's just something that a lot of people weren't willing to really talk to me about.
Or they just call you a student and you're just used to
Yeah,
see them
or
because you don't have a social clout.
Or I just get like, you're a student.
Yeah, I think, and the thing is, I think that there is, like, all of us have immense privilege because of who we work for, right? You get more access. If you work for, you know, there have been titles that I've worked at that people are thrilled to talk to you about, and you get unlimited access to, you know, when I was at The Independent, it's probably more like left-wing MPs, and like when I was at Newsweek, more Americans are like, oh, I know that brand, I'm happy to chat to you. When you're working by yourself, it is really hard, it is difficult. And, you know, like you were saying, sometimes it can take months. You know, there's people who don't reply to me, and I think, but I would definitely say, like, keep picking up the phone, maybe compare what you're saying as well in your email. I don't want to assume that it's gender, possibly it is, and it really wouldn't surprise me, but compare what you're saying, see if you can, like, pull your resources, work together. And genuinely, when I was saying that's a really good story, I wasn't joking, like, if you are a student and you're noticing that when you're emailing representatives who are supposed to be representing all of us, right, and they're not replying to you but they're replying to your male colleague, change your name on your email to a male name and see if you get more responses. That's an interesting story. Write an opinion piece about it. That's an interesting story. I think because the microphone has gone, I'll just carry on chatting. The man has cut it off. But you know, sometimes the story that you're looking to do, and I realise it's a piece of university work, so you can't be like, sorry, lecturers, I've done something different. But sometimes when you're pursuing a story, the more interesting story develops around it. Yeah. And so part of being a journalist is recognising, you know what, that didn't work out, but this story's interesting. Yeah. And so pick the things that you can take from that story. You, as far as I know from this, have a really good opinion piece and potentially quite a good news piece as well. And, you know, freak out some of those representatives and make them get in touch with you.
I'm sort of producing. Is it working again? Yeah.
It is.
Producing stories for television in particular, but generally I think is also, this may sound weird, but partly psychology. You need to persuade somebody. Sometimes I sit and think, how am I going to persuade somebody to talk to me about this topic? to Dutch media. Who cares? You know, why would you want to be seen on Dutch television? I'm never going to see it in my life. I'm not reaching my audience, and why would they work with me or want to be interviewed and give their time to me? So sometimes I just sit down and think, okay, how could I persuade them? Sometimes I simply say, you know, this is relevant in the Netherlands at the moment. This is a discussion that we have. We're very much looking to the UK because you're usually one step ahead in developments on all sorts of parts of life. But sometimes it's also people's ego really works. So saying, oh, you're such an expert, I really need to know more about this, and for this and that reason. And even saying that you're a student and that you're working on your final topic, or that may help, because people do want to help you if they know what they're helping you with. So yeah, just sometimes think, why would they want to help me with this story?
So we've got time for 2 more questions, and then we're going to do some networking.
Hi, I've got a question for Emily. So I'm a sports journalism student and massively outnumbered on my course. And I was just wondering, do you ever get used to being the only woman in the room, or is it something that you're just having to sort of learn to work with?
Good question. I think probably, yeah, you do get used to it. I think you kind of forget. Well, personally, I think I forget genders really at the end of the day, because it doesn't matter. You're there to do a job. You're there to either write or broadcast or, you know, whatever you're there to do. So it doesn't really matter. It's internal at the end of the day. It's going to be more difficult for the women in the room because we're outnumbered. But it's a mental thing where you just have to ignore it, and you just have to think, you know, I'm here for a reason. I'm here because I'm good. I'm here because my boss knows I can do a good job. And that, at the end of the day, is all that matters. It doesn't matter, you know, if, like, there's men, you know, laughing in the corner, and it's difficult to have a conversation with them because you've got nothing in common with them. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because you're there for you, and you're there for your broadcaster. So yes, but it is difficult, but you get used to it, I think.
Thank you.
Just on that,
Yes.
how do you get there? You sound so confident. For someone who's thinking about it,
Yeah.
and someone who's doing it, you sound like you walked into the room and you were there already. But if
Yeah.
you go back to the first time you had to do
It's
this,
petrifying.
yeah. So
It's
how do
petrifying.
you get there? Like,
Yeah.
what voices are in your head that's saying, I've got this, I can do this? You know, how did you look in the mirror and do the, what's that Mel Robbins thing where she looks in the mirror and she's like, I'd like to meet. It's like, what, do you have a mantra that you do? I'm only asking because I can hear what you're saying, and it's really scary, isn't it? So, and you're
Yeah.
there already, so what
Yeah.
was the first time like for you, and how did you get through that, and how do you build on that?
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
true.
I will take another question, but I just think that was...
I think I was quite a quiet kid in school, to be honest with you. And then it was uni that brought me out of my shell. Met some amazing people, and then I was lucky enough to work with some good people at work, and that helped me kind of come into my shell. And it's belief at the end of the day. And you've got to walk into that room and think, you know, I don't really care. I don't really care what you think, because I know I'm good and I know I'm doing a good job. I've got no time for them, to be honest, like men in general. I'm sorry to all the men in the room, but I don't really care. Like, they, you know, at the end of the day, I'm freelance and I'm here for myself and to prove I'm good enough and for my broadcasters. And yeah, so no, they're not going to get me a job at the end of the day, because you know they're working for written, and I'm not in that industry. So it's, yeah, you just got to walk in straight back, shoulders back, head up, and believe in yourself.
Thank you. Great, thank you. I think if we've got time for 2 more. Okay. I did see a hand over here, so I'm going to...
So the journalism industry to get into, I know, is very competitive, and so is basically every other industry at the moment as well. And a concern that I've had, and I know that many of my friends have had, is when we leave uni, we don't all have secured like postgraduate roles, and we're probably going to have to work another part-time, like unqualified job in the meantime. From your experience, did you experience having to do that before you actually got your, yeah? And
I did loads. Did about 30 different jobs. I mean, I'm very loosely qualified for nothing, but I've done many different things.
I know that something that we all worry about is a lot is thinking, oh, we're not going to have that immediate postgraduate job. Like, there's a stigma that you should come out of uni and have like that job, you know. And is it doable to go through a different career path and then kind of get back to it? I was just going to open it up to the panel and see what people's experience was.
I'll go. Yeah, I think it's definitely. I don't. Do you want me to? Can you hear me? I don't know. Shall I shout or shall I shout into the microphone? I don't think that I can't tell you how you should feel as a young person, right? We're graduating in totally different times. I would hope that you don't feel any pressure to immediately go into that industry because careers are long, like really, really long. You're going to retire at like, I don't know, 90 or something. It's going to be like a long, long time. So if you have the passion to do it now and you're dead set on, right, I want to go in and I want to nail a job, like come straight out of university, brilliant. Good for you, that's absolutely fantastic. I just buggered around for a bit. Like I sort of went travelling and then I did like loads of temp jobs and I mean you sounded like you went into like archaeology briefly, that was great. But I was working in a school. I graduated, I travelled for a bit and then I went and did a master's in journalism. So I definitely want to do this, I really, really want to do this. And then there were no jobs. And so I worked in secondary schools with like angry children for like 3 years. And then just kept applying for jobs because I was like, I will do this eventually. It's that thing of like believing in yourself and having perseverance. If it doesn't happen immediately, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And I really don't want to get too like deep, but like that's the same thing for like all the advice in life. Like just because it hasn't happened to you at 21 or 22, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just like, cool, for now that's not for me, but it will be in future. So just kind of keep cracking on, I think. Microphone passing was not one of my jobs.
I was going to say, look, don't put so much pressure on yourself. It's so, the career is long, 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 and some days you'll feel like you've lived an entire decade. But yeah, it's my first foray into television was I was at university studying archaeology, and I met someone who worked at Fox Sports in Australia, and so I got in as a freelance. I learned how to do some, it's called presentations, where you used to click TV ads live during sports so they could do their revenue. While I was there, and this is when I talk about multi-skilling and finding out what you want to do, I learned how to tape edit, which then led me to a job because I thought, you know what, my destiny is not in Australia, it's going to be abroad. It took me to CNN International as a tape editor during the Christmas holidays. I would fill in, I would do all their jobs, which then led me to a job when I was 29 by this stage, as the overnight desk editor for NBC News, which was, you know, 20-something. I'm 51 now. It's not a thing like this. You just get this job to this job. It goes all over the shop. That is life. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. You'll find your way.
Yeah, I can always find something. Joking is one of my is part of my career. So no, I agree. Similar. During my time as I did an exchange year in the UK in London City University School of Journalism. My Dutch or English isn't my first language. I worked in a pub and I learned to listen and understand all the variety of English accents there are, from like a deep Scottish accent to Irish, and to a point where I could actually understand an Irish guy better. And my cameraman said, "Did you understand what he was saying?" He was English. And you're Dutch, and you understand what I said, "I learned that in a pub." So, you know, and I did, I'm not, I was never very much into sports journalism, but at one desperate point I worked for a sports video company, but I learned all, you know, how it works, how the tennis counting and points, and I use that now. I learned to do edit with Premiere at the video company. I use those skills now. So, you know, you'll whatever job you do, you'll know lots about angry children. So that can be very useful in your reporting.
It is
So,
in my
you
life.
know, so I think you'll take, you know, just take what you can from the job that's, you know, comes across your path.
So I'm going to stop you there. Thank you so much. We don't have time for any more questions, but we do have some lovely cakes and tea and water and juice at the back. So there's time to have a chat with our panel in person. So please stick around, and I'd love you to be with me in saying thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause? So much information that we've learnt today. So yeah, stick around, and the uni doesn't do this very often, as you know, so I don't know how you managed to do it, Lydia, but there's food at the back, so go and get some.